The moment I realized the government had been lying to us for 70 years, I was staring at a photograph that wasn't supposed to exist. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in March, no return address, postmarked from somewhere in eastern Kentucky. Inside was a single photograph, slightly faded, dated on the back, August 14, 1987. The image showed a massive black cat lying dead on the tailgate of an old pickup truck. Two men stood beside it, faces deliberately scratched out. The cat was enormous, easily 6 feet from nose to tail tip, muscular, unmistakably feline. Jet black. Its paws were the size of dinner plates. Attached was a handwritten note on yellowed paper. "They made us burn it. Said it never existed. But I kept this. Someone needs to know the truth." No signature. No name. Just those 2 sentences and a photograph that defied everything I'd been told about North American wildlife. I'm a researcher. I deal in facts, evidence, verifiable data. But this photograph changed everything. Because if it was real, it meant that for decades, maybe centuries, something remarkable had been living in America's forests. And someone had been working very hard to keep it secret. I began my investigation in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, where sightings have been reported consistently since the 1800s. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and pine sap. I drove narrow mountain roads that twisted through dense forests of oak, poplar, and rhododendron. The Appalachian wilderness stretched endlessly in every direction, wild, ancient, full of shadows. Local historians told me about the black panthers that pioneers had encountered. Farmers in the 1920s who'd lost livestock to something that left tracks too large for bobcats, too feline for bears. Cherokee elders who spoke of shadow cats that appeared and disappeared like smoke, protectors of the deepest forests. But when I tried to find official records, I hit walls. Archives that should have contained wildlife reports from the early 1900s were missing entire sections. Forest Service documents from the 1930s through the 1960s had pages removed. Game warden logs showed obvious gaps. One retired librarian in Asheville, Margaret Foster, pulled me aside. "Someone cleaned those records out in the 80s, she whispered. Federal agents came through, said they were digitizing historical documents. Took boxes of materials. Never returned them. When I asked about it, my supervisor told me to forget I'd ever seen them." I stood in the Pisgah National Forest at dusk, watching fog settle into the valleys like a living thing. The silence was profound. Not peaceful, watchful. The kind of silence that makes you aware you're being observed. Somewhere in these mountains, in forests covering thousands of square miles, something moved unseen. Something that had learned to avoid humans, to hunt in darkness, to exist in the margins between myth and reality. And someone, somewhere, knew about it. Someone was keeping it secret. The photograph in my hand felt heavier than it should. Because if this was real, then every official denial, every dismissive explanation, every expert who'd called witnesses confused or mistaken, all of it was a lie. I looked into the darkening forest and wondered, what else are they hiding? James "Jimmy" Patterson was 81 years old when I met him at his cabin outside Gatlinburg, Tennessee. His hands shook slightly as he poured coffee, but his eyes were sharp, clear, haunted. 1973, he said. I was a game warden, 28 years old, stationed in the Smokies. Got a call about something killing deer near Cades Cove. When I got there, I found a 6-point buck, throat torn out, partially eaten. The kill was fresh, maybe an hour old. He paused, staring into his coffee cup. I followed the drag marks into the woods. That's when I saw it. 30 yards away, feeding. Black as midnight, big as a mountain lion but heavier, more muscular. It looked up at me with these yellow-green eyes. I radioed it in immediately. Described exactly what I was seeing. What happened? I asked. 2 supervisors showed up within an hour. Federal wildlife agents. They examined the kill site, took photographs, collected samples. Then they took my camera. Told me I'd seen a large feral dog. When I argued, they threatened my pension. Said if I ever mentioned what I'd seen, I'd lose everything. My job, my benefits, my credibility. Jimmy showed me his old service logs. Pages were missing. They came back later and removed the reports, he said. Made it like it never happened. But I know what I saw. And I wasn't the only one. Dr. Rebecca Thorne was a veterinarian in Hot Springs, Arkansas. In 2006, a rancher brought her something unusual, a piece of hide with claw marks and a tuft of black fur caught in barbed wire. The fur was wrong, she told me over the phone. Too coarse for a dog, wrong texture for a bear. The claw marks showed a retractable claw pattern, feline. I sent samples to 3 different labs for analysis. What did they find? That's the thing. 2 labs confirmed it was from a large felid, consistent with puma concolor, mountain lion, but with anomalous melanistic characteristics. The 3rd lab, a federal facility, returned a report saying it was domestic dog. When I questioned the discrepancy, they confiscated my remaining samples. Said it was part of a routine audit. I never got them back. Travis Holcomb was a long-haul trucker who'd driven Route 84 through East Texas for 30 years. He'd seen 3. First time was 1998, around 2 a.m., near Timpson. Crossed right in front of my rig. I had to brake hard. Biggest cat I've ever seen, completely black, long tail. Second time was 2005, same stretch of highway. Third time was 2019. That one sat in the middle of the road for a full minute, just staring at my headlights before it walked away. Did you report it? He laughed bitterly. First time, yeah. Highway patrol told me I was tired, seeing things. After that, I stopped reporting. But I know other truckers who've seen them too. We talk about it at rest stops. There's something out there. Something big. And it's not afraid of us anymore. Angela Martinez ran a wildlife rehabilitation center in the Ozarks. In 2015, a hunter brought her trail camera footage. It was crystal clear, she said. Nighttime infrared. A large black cat walking past the camera, maybe 15 feet away. You could see the muscular build, the long tail, the size of its paws. It was absolutely, unquestionably a big cat. We tried to get it verified through official channels. What happened? Fish and Wildlife examined it and declared it inconclusive. Said it could be a house cat close to the camera creating a size illusion. But we'd placed a tape measure in the frame for scale. That cat was over 6 feet long. When we pushed back, they suggested we were trying to create a hoax. The hunter got so much harassment he deleted the footage and refused to talk about it anymore. Former Forest Service Ranger David Kowalski agreed to meet me only if I didn't use his real name or location. We met at a roadside diner in Virginia. I've seen tracks, he said quietly. Multiple times. Paw prints bigger than any bobcat, bigger than any dog. 4 toes, feline pattern, retractable claw marks. I photographed them, measured them, made plaster casts. Submitted them all through proper channels. And every single report came back as large dog or black bear. Even when the tracks clearly showed feline morphology. I was told to stop filing reports. When I didn't, I was reassigned to a desk job. 3 other rangers I know had similar experiences. We learned to keep our mouths shut. He pulled out his phone, showed me photographs he'd never officially reported. Tracks in mud. Claw marks on trees at heights no dog or bear could reach. Scat containing deer fur with feline tooth punctures. They're out there, he said. They've always been out there. and someone very powerful doesn't want the public to know. I collected over 300 testimonies. Hunters, farmers, police officers, wildlife professionals, tourists, residents. The stories were remarkably consistent. Massive black cats, 100 to 200 pounds long tails with curved tips, yellow, amber, or green eyes that reflected light, incredible stealth, appeared and disappeared without sound, powerful builds, broad shoulders, muscular hindquarters, primarily nocturnal activity, livestock kills with feline hunting pattern, sightings concentrated in the Appalachians, Ozarks, East Texas, rural Carolinas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana. But almost no physical evidence made it into official records. Photographs were dismissed. Tracks were explained away. Fur samples disappeared. Bodies were never found. It was as if someone was systematically erasing proof. I contacted Dr. Mitchell Brennan, a wildlife biologist at Auburn University who'd spent 40 years studying North American predators. Melanistic mountain lions have never been scientifically documented in North America, he stated firmly. Not one verified specimen. No museum pelts, no skeletal remains, no genetic samples. The absence of evidence is overwhelming. What about the eyewitness accounts? I asked. Misidentification. Pattern recognition errors. People see what they expect to see, especially in low light. A bear walking on all fours can look remarkably cat-like from certain angles. Large dogs, especially in shadow, can appear feline. What about the people with wildlife training? Game wardens, veterinarians, experienced hunters. He hesitated. Even trained observers can make mistakes under stress or poor viewing conditions. It was the standard scientific position. Reasonable. Evidence-based. Except it didn't account for the sheer volume of reports, the consistency of descriptions, or the systematic disappearance of physical evidence. I found Dr. Samantha Cole, a geneticist who'd studied melanism in big cats worldwide. Her perspective was more nuanced. Melanism is caused by genetic mutations affecting melanin production, she explained. In jaguars and leopards, we see it regularly. In mountain lions, we've never documented it. But never documented doesn't mean impossible. Mountain lion populations are vast, spread across enormous territories. If melanistic individuals occur at extremely low frequencies, say 1 in 10,000, and if they're more elusive than normal-colored individuals, we might simply never encounter them. So it's theoretically possible? Theoretically, yes. Genetic mutations occur. We've seen albino mountain lions, partially melanistic deer, even melanistic coyotes. But without a specimen, we can't prove it. And that's the scientific standard. Proof requires physical evidence. The skeptics had logical explanations for every piece of evidence. Escaped exotic pets. Owners illegally keep jaguars or leopards, which escape released zoo animals. Facilities secretly release animals to avoid scandals. Misidentified known animals. Bears, large dogs, regular mountain lions in shadow. Psychological factors. Mass hysteria, confirmation bias, cultural mythology. Each explanation seemed plausible for individual cases. But for hundreds of reports across centuries? Across thousands of miles? From trained professionals? I discovered something troubling in Freedom of Information Act requests. Between 1960 and 1990, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had a classified program called Project Big Cat. Documents were heavily redacted, but fragments revealed. Investigation of anomalous felid reports in southeastern states. Collection of biological samples showing atypical genetic markers. Recommendations for public information management and witness credibility assessment protocols. References to population control measures and habitat modification strategies. The program was quietly discontinued in 1991. Or at least, official documentation stopped. An analyst who'd worked on the project, speaking on condition of anonymity, told me, "We found things. things that didn't fit the narrative. We were told the public wasn't ready for certain information, that revealing the data would cause panic, undermine conservation efforts, create legal complications regarding endangered species protections. What kind of things? I pressed. I can't say. But ask yourself, if the government admits a large, untracked predator exists in populated areas, what are the legal implications? The liability? The cost of management and protection? Sometimes it's easier to just deny. Robert Finch, a retired fish and wildlife investigator, met me in a park in Raleigh. He was 76, cautious, constantly checking to see if we were being watched. I investigated 47 Black Panther reports between 1978 and 1995, he said. 17 of them had physical evidence that I personally verified as feline. Tracks, scat, fur samples, prey kills. I documented everything properly, followed every protocol. What happened to those reports? Suppressed. Every single one. My supervisors told me I was misidentifying evidence. When I pushed back, I was threatened with termination. Eventually, I learned to write reports the way they wanted: large dog, bear, misidentification. But I kept my own records. Copies of everything. He handed me a flash drive. It's all here. Photographs, measurements, lab results that were never officially filed. I'm old now. Don't care about repercussions anymore. Someone needs to see this. The files were damning. Clear photographs of oversized feline tracks. Lab analyses confirming felid DNA from hair samples. Prey-kill patterns inconsistent with any known North American predator. All stamped, "Do not release," or "classified pending review." Evidence that had been deliberately buried. I spoke with Dr. Helen Marquez, a cryptozoologist, though she preferred anomalous zoology researcher. She'd been investigating Black Panther reports for 20 years. The pattern is clear, she said. Reports get filed, evidence gets collected, then it disappears into bureaucratic black holes. Witnesses are discredited. Professionals are silenced. The scientific community rejects any data that doesn't fit their established paradigm. It's not a conspiracy in the dramatic sense, it's institutional inertia. Admitting these animals exist would require rewriting textbooks, revising conservation strategies, allocating resources. It's easier to maintain the status quo. But why? I asked. If they exist, shouldn't we study them? Protect them? Because acknowledgement creates obligations. If black panthers exist, they're likely endangered. That means habitat protections, hunting restrictions, land use limitations. That means economic impacts on logging, development, agriculture. Powerful interests don't want that. So the simplest solution is denial. I was left with a disturbing realization. The absence of proof wasn't evidence of absence. It was evidence of suppression. Hundreds of credible witnesses. Decades of consistent reports. Physical evidence that kept disappearing. A government program that investigated and then buried its findings. Either this was the most persistent mass delusion in American wildlife history, or something remarkable was being systematically hidden from the public. And I was beginning to believe I knew which. 3 months into my investigation, I received a phone call. The voice was male, older, cautious. "You're asking questions about black panthers," he said. "You need to stop." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what happened to the last person who got too close to the truth." "Meet me tomorrow night. Alone." He gave me coordinates in the Chattahoochee National Forest in Georgia. Against every instinct I went. The meeting point was a fire tower deep in the forest, miles from any trail. I arrived at sunset, the forest darkening rapidly around me. An old pickup truck was already there. The man who emerged was in his 70s, weathered, with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who'd spent his life outdoors. He didn't offer his name. "I worked for Fish and Wildlife for 37 years, he said. Specialized in large predator management. I've seen things that would make you question everything you think you know about North American ecology." He opened his truck and pulled out a locked metal case. Inside were photographs, documents, biological samples in sealed bags. "In 1984, he continued, we captured a melanistic mountain lion in Rabun County, Georgia. Fully mature male, approximately 180 pounds, jet black coat. We documented everything: genetic samples, skull measurements, dental records. It was definitive proof." "What happened to it?" His expression darkened. "Orders came from Washington within 48 hours. The specimen was confiscated by federal agents. All our documentation was seized. We were told to sign non-disclosure agreements. The official report stated we'd captured a large feral dog with unusual coloration. The genetic samples were destroyed. The photographs were classified." "Why?" "Because in 1984, the Fish and Wildlife Service was fighting to get funding for wolf reintroduction programs. There was massive public resistance. The last thing they needed was news of an unknown large predator in populated areas. It would have killed public support, triggered panic, derailed years of conservation planning." He handed me a photograph. It showed a magnificent black cat, sedated, lying on an examination table. The size was undeniable. The feline features unmistakable. "I kept this one copy," he said, "hidden for 40 years. Because someday, someone needed to know the truth." He told me about other incidents. A black panther killed by a hunter in Tennessee in 1991, the body confiscated by authorities within hours, declared a misidentified bear. Trail camera footage from the Ozarks in 2003 showing clear images of a black panther, the footage seized, the memory card lost in processing. A road-killed specimen in Louisiana in 2012, removed by state wildlife officials before local press could photograph it, reported as a large dog. "There's a protocol," he explained. "When credible evidence surfaces, it's handled by a specific team. They confiscate physical materials, discredit witnesses if necessary, create alternative explanations. It's not malicious. They genuinely believe they're protecting the public, maintaining order, preventing panic. But in doing so, they've created a systematic cover-up spanning decades." "How many are out there?" I asked. "We estimated 200 to 400 individuals in the 1980s. Scattered across the southeastern states, primarily in the Appalachians and Ozarks. Solitary, elusive, with territories spanning hundreds of square miles. They've survived by being essentially invisible. And they've been helped by our refusal to acknowledge them." We stood on that fire tower as darkness fell completely. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, an ocean of trees swallowing the last light. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm dying," he said simply. "Lung cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I'm tired of the lie. These animals deserve to exist without being erased. People deserve to know the truth about their own wilderness." He handed me the metal case. "Everything I kept is in here. Do with it what you will. But be careful. People have built careers on this denial. Institutions have invested credibility. You'll face resistance. You'll be called a crackpot, a conspiracy theorist, a fraud." "I know," I said. He smiled grimly. "Then you're braver than I was." I never saw him again. 2 months later, I found his obituary in an Atlanta newspaper. No mention of his work, his discoveries, his burden. I spent weeks examining the contents of that case. The photographs were authentic, forensically analyzed, showing no signs of manipulation. The documents detailed decades of suppressed evidence. The biological samples, though old, still contained genetic material. I submitted everything to independent laboratories and conservation organizations. The results came back consistent, evidence of melanistic puma concolor in North America. Not jaguars, not escaped exotics, not misidentified bears. Mountain lions with rare melanistic genes. The scientific community's response was complicated. Some researchers accepted the evidence. Others demanded more proof. A few dismissed it outright as elaborate hoaxes. Federal agencies declined to comment. But something shifted. Wildlife professionals started coming forward with their own suppressed reports. Photographs began surfacing from private collections. States quietly began revising their predator management protocols. The truth, it seemed, was becoming impossible to contain. I returned to that fire tower in Georgia one last time, 6 months after the investigation ended. The forest was alive with spring sounds, birds calling, insects humming, life awakening. As darkness fell, I heard something moving through the underbrush below. Heavy, deliberate, utterly silent except for the faint displacement of leaves. I shone my flashlight down. 2 eyes reflected back at me. Yellow-amber, set wide in a broad, powerful head. The creature stood at the forest edge, partially visible in the beam. Massive shoulders, dark coat absorbing light, a long tail curved at the tip. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. The cat didn't flee, didn't threaten. It simply watched me with an intelligence that was almost unsettling. Then it turned, fluid as shadow, and vanished into the forest. I think about all the witnesses who were dismissed, discredited, told they'd imagined things. I think about the wildlife professionals who were silenced, threatened, forced to bury their findings. I think about the institutional machinery that worked for decades to deny reality. And I think about that old fish and wildlife officer handing me his burden in the darkness, finally able to release a truth he'd carried for 40 years. The black panthers of North America exist. They've always existed. They've survived everything we threw at them: habitat destruction, persecution, systemic denial. They've survived by becoming ghosts, by learning to move through our world unseen, existing in the spaces between certainty and myth. The forests are coming back now, slowly reclaiming land we once cleared. And with them, perhaps, these shadow cats are stepping back into the light. Not because they've changed, but because we're finally ready to see them. Or maybe they're still teaching us the most important lesson of all, that no matter how much we think we've mapped and documented and understood, wilderness still holds secrets. Truth still hides in places we're afraid to look. I keep that photograph on my desk. The one from 1987, of a massive black cat on a truck tailgate. The one that started everything. And I keep the old officer's final words in mind: these animals deserve to exist without being erased. The question now isn't whether black panthers exist in North America. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable, real. The question is, if they've been here all along, surviving in the shadows while we denied their existence, what else have we been refusing to see?